Welcome to Powerhouse. Joining us today is Jennifer Cheng. She's an entrepreneur and investor at NewChic Capital. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Joyce. You're definitely rocking it on your podcast and also on Clubhouse, where I'm seeing you more and more now.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. Clubhouse has definitely brought different people back together. I think I'm quite it's quite exciting to see different content. So yeah, it's really cool to see you there. So great to have you on. And you have such a wealth of experience over the years in different industries. So maybe we'll just start there. Maybe you can give us a quick overview of your background and how do you get to the current position?
Yeah, basically, I grew up in the U.S. I went to Brown University for my undergrad. Prior to that, I was actually a really industrious, and maybe I can play for you guys later. But I was a concert pianist in training, and so I was a very good Tiger Cub. I was very good at taking tests. I was very academic, and I was really good at piano. I got a lot of travel in because I used to represent the U.S. and won international competitions. And after that, I had a hard choice to make. I had to decide whether I wanted to be an artist and be a pianist or, do more of a traditional college path. Right. And it actually came down to an accident I had when I was going for my piano competition. So my aunt actually closed the door on my hand by mistake. And then I definitely sprained a finger or something in the door. I had to use a little popsicle stick sort of splint to kind of make sure it was okay. And then I played through it. And at the end, I was almost crying. It was very painful. And I came in second. So my father actually was like, oh, that's really great that you were able to play the, Chopin concerto, whatever I was playing. He was like, but, do you really want to go through your whole life not knowing whether you're going to be second? And I'm like, well, I hurt my finger. And he was like, yeah, but small accident, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So he kind of gave me a really serious talk about that. And I was just like, okay. So I gave up my dreams of being a concert pianist because he was, he made that whole talk, serious, Asian tiger father talk about, whether or not it's a viable career and you can't put, all that in one basket. So in the end, I actually, I went to Brown, and then while I was there, I still pursued piano and theater alongside of international relations and, some other concentrations. Actually, prior to that, I think in the later part of my childhood, as well as through until college, my parents had actually already started me doing modeling and acting because I was a little bit scared of public speaking. I was shy and I really was, buried in books all the time. And then I think as a result of that training in the piano, I became a little bit more fearless. And then in college, I kind of came into my own sort of socially. Mm-hmm. I was very entrepreneurial. My brother and I worked on a bunch of projects. One was actually I would consider almost like a predecessor to Facebook. So I was acting and modeling to kind of have extra money on the side. But the other thing I did was work at other startups and then student focused startups. So two of the startups I worked at, College Beans, Student Advantage. I did a lot of biz dev, and I didn't realize it was tech biz dev. So I was just basically running around and being like, hello, signing up students. So it's community building. And I'd be like, hey, you get discounts if you sign up here. And then I'd be like, oh, for my startup, as well as those two other ones, I was running around to Pizza Hut and even called up student Visa card and was like, hey, do you want college kids to have credit cards? So what I didn't realize, I was doing the first online advertising sales. Right. And I actually really was. It was we were like, oh, we'll give you a banner. You can click on the banner. But at that point in time, there was no way to measure clicks or anything yet. Mm-hmm. So actually, when I moved to New York, and actually that's when I met a later part before I moved to Hong Kong, I think I met you and then your husband also, because I was actually doing more of the acting, as well as I was still working at a hedge fund and a Google competitor. So when I was doing that, it was actually very interesting because I felt like I was leading a double life. People would be like, "Oh, is that you? You're on a billboard in Times Square," and I'm like, "Oh no, no, I am wearing a suit and I'm not I don't look like I'm an MTV girl. Like no. Yeah, it just looks like me. Oh, everyone says all Asians look alike. I used a stage name then too, so that way I was because I had a really weird incident with internet stalkers really early on. So I was like, hey. So I did literally lead a double life. Oh, wow. So then when I was at in the finance industry, I kind of hit a glass ceiling because this was pre Me Too. So I worked at the Google competitors, literally selling clicks, clicks and keywords. And I think the one that we were at, it got acquired by partially by Yahoo and then Ask.com, Ask Jeeves. So there was like a merger of search engines back then. I don't know if you remember, but back then it was like the landscape was kind of consolidating. But I was learning because I had to compete against Google search engine and other ones to kind of get ad spend. And then at that point in time, I was able to build up like books of business, like 10 million US recurring. And I was like, wow, pretty good at this. It's okay. Yeah. But then I realized that any tech company I worked for, I even worked for LookSmart at one point too. They would be sort of like pigeonholing me to only do business development and go chase revenue and sales. And like when I said, oh, maybe I should go get my MBA, people were like, oh, but you're already good at sales. Why? And then I was like, like I kind of wanted to get it for me. So at that point, I was having second thoughts about my life in New York City, even though it was very exciting. And then the other thing that kind of made me kind of like, okay, straw that broke the camel's back. I promised my parents if I didn't land a leading role, that I would move into getting my MBA or my law degree. And so when I didn't get the role of Vanessa on Gossip Girl, and then when I didn't get Memoirs of a Geisha, I was like, I take all these, like the Gossip Girl, I actually got lots of callbacks and, I thought it was quite close. And they wanted to cast a minority. But then I was also told by my agent that they said that I was too unrealistically pretty and that I didn't look Asian enough. And that, they wanted the focus to be on like the main people. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So it was like
typecast us.
Yeah. So many different categories to typecast you, and sometimes they don't have a category for you. So like now seeing the like success of like Crazy Rich Asians, your projects, for example, I'm like, wow, we kind of have to be on the production end of things. We can't just be the faces of things of other people's stories through their lens, right? But at that point in time, I hadn't realized that yet. I was just like, I need to be on the business side of things. Right. So that realization made me take my GMATs, really good at taking tests. So got one wrong, so I got a pretty much a almost perfect score. You can look at my LinkedIn and see what score was because I actually keep it there because I'm such a geek. So I got into Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, HKUST. And at the time, my uncle was a professor there and also a dean. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go here. And it's kind of like I'm in my bubble and he's watching over me. And then while I was there, actually, I started meeting you guys again because you had arrived to Hong Kong. Yeah. And while I was finishing up the program and even during, I was still a workaholic. I was working 3 part-time jobs that turned into kind of like full-time jobs. So I was working for a children's charity and a fund. I was working for a media company. And back then they were like one of the first in Hong Kong to do mobile as well as internet advertising. So I was like basically helping traditional companies back, go from magazine format to like online format. It was a wedding magazine called 大儿子 back then, 大儿子. And then I was helping them with like hot mobile and things like that. So back then it was like kind of a burgeoning thing. Now I'm dating myself, right? And then the third thing that I was working on, was actually another company that was actually a big tech company. And then I ended up just working out of my dorm for the last few months of business school. It's called Rackspace. And while I was at Rackspace, which was a publicly listed company at the time, I was able to get a lot of startups. Also work with like companies like Twitter, work with, meet people like at Facebook, Dell. One of my clients was like Zynga China, right? It was like really cool to be in that space and then meet all the startups. So long story short, I got poached by one of the startups that I was a client. I worked with them for actually only 2 or 3 months, but landed a lot of deals. And then I don't want to talk publicly about my experience there because it's not a really super happy one, but that one, it exited. So that was one of the reasons why I left. But it exited, it got acquired within 2 or 3 months. And then I went to actually one of the competitors in the e-commerce space. And that one, I worked with them for like a year and a half. And when I got married, kind of was, pressured by family not to be the face and do that so much anymore. But by then we got acquired, or we're in talks for acquisition by a company that eventually acquired us, merged us with a lot of Southeast Asian entities. We grew to a team of over like 2,000 people. At the time when I first joined the company, it was like 8 people, 12 people. And then we grew to almost 200 million revenue US in under a year. And at that point, we were an acquisition target. It was interesting because we were like, should we do fundraising? Oh, no, we shouldn't do it. No, we ended up not doing any fundraising. And we got to IPO in under 2 years. Wow. So that was my big exit. And that was why I was able to start angel investing and as well as bootstrapping other startups. But I was able to be an entrepreneur, but also an angel investor, and my checks got bigger and bigger over time to the point where now I'm just managing for our family office, our investments, our allocations. And now I look at a combination of direct investments and impact and ESG, and also impact and ESG and diverse funds and VCs. One of them you interviewed, but basically, yeah. Or one of them, I think you heard her interview, and you know her as well. She's really an example. Like, I like to bet on people as well as companies. And I feel like, we actually have to, my philosophy now is that we have to fund founders as well as funders to kind of make the capital sort of cycle a more virtuous one, so that the capital flows to the right parts of, the world, the economy, the right people, and then we can create like a stronger ecosystem together.
So you've always been, it sounds like you always look for the opportunity and do that. And then that, one thing leads to the next thing.
I don't advise doing so much and being such a workaholic, because my classmates voted me most likely to succeed, but they also gave me a Hello Kitty lunchbox and utensil, because they said this is the trophy for most likely to eat in class, because I had no time to eat and sleep. So I was like sometimes eating and sleeping in class. So it was quite embarrassing. So yeah, I'm sorry. No, I should let you circle back, but I'm just saying that it's actually really important to have some kind of work-life balance. You have to have that.
Yeah. Right. That's true. But I do want to go back like from the original, because you mentioned you always been on, like, you have the entrepreneurial spirit and you started with your brother. I mean, how did you even get to that point? So how do you know you were entrepreneurial and wanted to start something? Or is it just kind of organic? You and your brother kind of talk about things and, hey, why don't we just start it? So that's always.
I feel like the reason why I became entrepreneurial and have entrepreneurial spirit is partly because my parents are immigrants. They were immigrants to the US. They immigrated, actually, they went to Brown too. That's where they met. And one of the things that, and then actually my grandmothers were all very entrepreneurial. By the time World War II and Cultural Revolution and all that stuff happened, like my family's wealth was kind of like decimated. So my parents actually built themselves from nothing, and they were very inspirational. So I grew up thinking, working 3 jobs is normal, because that's what my mom did. And then she'd be asleep at my piano lessons. And then she would be working, night shift at the hospital, but then she'd also be like, buying and investing in real estate, and then also being a broker, and then also teaching English, and then also a teacher at the school. So I just thought it was kind of normal. It conditioned me. And then the other thing I think is because in college, I think it's the best time to get very entrepreneurial, or even earlier, because in college and beforehand, you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have anything like hanging on you like a burden. So you're quite free. So I feel like you should use your time to like get involved in worthwhile projects. I mean, obviously it's like, if I'm like, go to chill, go to the pub, go to the bar, whatever. But I used a lot of my extra time, and I thought it was like really thrilling after doing classes and studying and everything, to like, hang out with my brother, his friends, cup noodles, and then just be like working on projects. And when you're young, you need a little bit less sleep, right? I think also what made me also continue to be entrepreneurial is some of my bets paid off. Because since I was at companies that exited, then tech companies were more likely to hire me. And then also as a result of that, I was also more likely to have an exit. And I did have exits early on. So also because of that, I was able to like reinvest in others and also myself. And my risk profile also adjusted as a result, because, you can then take more risks if you're like more or less okay.
Right.
Does that make sense? So I think just take the risk earlier in life. So
you're going to bet a bit more, a bit more risky.
Yeah. And then you can diversify more. You can be like, oh, interesting. We just got involved in an agri-tech deal. And I'm like, why would I be involved in agri-tech? And I'm like, actually that's impact, because it's food, it's Southeast Asia. It's like, it's underbanked people. So it's like kind of fintech. And it's like, there's like a lot of things rolled into one. So because of that, because you are kind of like able to do things early on and then do different things, you can start connecting the dots faster.
Right. So while you're doing all of that, what is one biggest hurdle that you feel you had to overcome throughout the years, or a biggest challenge? One project that had the biggest.
I think it's actually I still feel like a work in progress in many ways. Like, life is just, sometimes it's like you can control it, but sometimes it's like a series of happenstance, right? And then so I kind of like, my biggest challenge is actually twofold. One is like learning to let go. Like sometimes there's things you just can't control. So you just kind of have to let it happen and then kind of roll with the punches. And then, so that's like just something that I'm just learning to do, because I'm not a control freak of other people, but I'm kind of control freak about myself. And I think a nicer way to put that is that I'm kind of a perfectionist. Yeah. So basically like, if like I do something really well, I start feeling like, oh, like why am I not like, same with yoga. My yoga teacher was like, wow, Jen, like, you've only been practicing during the pandemic, and you can do full splits and like headstands, and you're doing this now. And I'm like, yeah, but like before when I couldn't, I was kind of like, then I have to do yoga every day. I have to drill, drill, drill. She's like, yeah, you drill yoga. She's like, yoga's supposed to be chill. You're supposed to like, holding your pose. I'm like, that's true. This is like a mindfulness practice. And I'm like drilling at it. So now like I have to tell myself to step back and be like, self-care doesn't have to be perfectionist. I don't have to feel imposter syndrome over yoga or like, I'm just basically trying to recalibrate myself all the time. Right. And then the other thing that I want to sort of stress is that I'm learning to put me first. And I kind of have to, because I realized, I had like a physical, emotional, all kinds of breakdown when I had my son. And that was a wake-up call because I was in the ICU for 2 weeks after having him.
Wow.
So it was my second child. And I should have realized, because like every time I was pregnant, I would kind of like, health things would happen, other things. So like, almost, dying or getting past that point of no return, as well as I had my second wake up call right before I had my third child, before I got pregnant with her. I had an Uber accident that kind of broke my sternum, and it was horrible because, again, like it was very close to, if that moved, I would have had internal bleeding. I could have punctured my heart and lungs, but it was basically a clean break all the way through my sternum, completely. Like if I showed you an MRI, you'd be like, like a doctor saw it and was like, I don't know how you're walking around. Like that's kind of nuts.
My God.
So, yeah. So it was kind of like, I feel like having this kind of like happen, you realize like, wow, like life is really short, and there's no reason not to, take better care of myself. And you forget that, like, not just as moms, but as like, that women leaders, we're always like, okay, if the kid doesn't need help, oh, my business needs help, oh, this person needs help, oh, that person needs help. And you end up giving so much that you totally, forget to like nourish yourself. So I think I'm working on those two things. Yeah, wow. For sure. Like, and it's a constant, like, yeah. And then my third thing was like the New Year's resolution is that I have to learn how to say no. Or that at least have to know how to say maybe. Because when I'm like, yes, okay, you're someone I always say yes to. But there's some people, like, if I haven't met them and I'm like, yes. And then they're like, oh, great. Like, now you have time for another, like, 30 minutes for me to pick your brain. Now this, now that. And it's kind of like, it gets endless. So I have to, like, learn how to also gatekeep myself. I also have to learn how to be like, okay, I don't owe it to take everyone to lunch and coffee and dinner. Like, I can't. There's only so much time in a day.
Right.
So I try to now look for like-minded people who reciprocate. And, their hand is not out, where it's like kind of like more of an exchange of like, there has to be reciprocity. Right. So now I'm trying to be like,
hey, tell me all your advice. Yeah. And like, thank you for leaving.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, thank you. What do I get out of it besides helping you? And then that's why one of the things I do when I like invest in, women entrepreneurs, as well as like invest time in people or like help them, I always say like, look, if I like write a check to you, or I, advise you, or I do something for you, you promise me that when you're successful, you turn around and pay it forward. You need to do that for someone else. If you don't, then I'll just realize like, it's just like a closed loop. Right. It's not repollinating. It's not anything. So I have that pay it forward mentality as well.
That's excellent. Any other daily routine that really helps calm you or resets your mind?
Okay. So the yoga helps center things. But the other thing is that I'm a huge beauty junkie. So I have like a lot of beauty devices and gear. I'd show you sometime, but you'd probably be like scared. But like, it's fun for me. Like anything as like simple as like, doing like a roller or like doing some like machine or like sitting back with a mask and chilling. Right. It's really fun. But I do admit that sometimes I'll be multitasking it. So I'll be like, with a kid, like listening to something and, answering email with a mask on. So like when I see that happen, sometimes I try to like take a step back and be like, okay, me time. The other thing is I got a virtual assistant recently, and finally I needed one. So she controls my calendar. She makes sure I'm not like overbooked. And she'll be like, okay, I blocked out this time for lunch, or I blocked out, like, she'll be like, this is your self-care time. Like, I mean, this is like, or she'll be like, no, it's Jennifer. It's like, I actually told her it's impossible for me to teleport from like, meeting A to meeting B, but at home, maybe I'll need like 5 to 10 minutes between Zooms, because that's okay. I can do that. But if I'm like, half an hour away from something, I can't go to something else half an hour away. And I also think technology has really helped, because now you're not expected like, be everywhere all the time. And actually, I don't know if it's helped, because like before when we were like doing more in-person meetings and just traveling around, I would be in the taxi or the Uber, just writing emails, doing all my things. So basically you have to kind of be productive all the time. Yeah. So I suggest that during this downtime or whatever resetting of the world that we're having during this, pandemic phase, that people will kind of just get back to realizing that this could be a normal phase, and just kind of, adjusting. Because, there's some parts of the world, I don't know if you watched Game of Thrones, but there are also parts of the world where winter is really long. Yeah. So we can treat this as a long winter. And then there's like a summer, and then there's like, permafrost. So basically, like, if everyone is hibernating, then I should be okay with, hibernating with a little bit, so I'm trying to learn to, I guess adjust. The final thing is that the yoga and the piano actually has really helped me. With piano, I was able to raise like lots of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars for charities, as well as PPE all over the world. So I was just playing piano like on social media and uploading the videos, uploading charity links, and then my daughter was doing that as well. So that has actually really like centered me. And if you want, I can pop it up and like closing music at the end.
Yeah, definitely, that'd be awesome. But that's great that you not only use it as a relaxing tool, but also for charity. So that's great. Do you think the work from home culture will stay? Just a little off topic, but since you brought it up, I'm just curious what you think after this whole resetting of the world. Do you think most industry would keep with that?
I think that that's definitely something that's kind of here to stay, or at least if it's not here to stay, because like I think startups always had like, and the tech culture, they'd always be like, hey, yeah, you can work from home a few days a week. They were much more flexible about it because they had to be. I think they're always a little bit ahead of the curve. And the pandemic has kind of, I feel like, accelerated the world in 5 years in many ways. Mm-hmm. Because usually, for example, some of the IPOs I've had, I'd expect like, okay, you harvest after 5 to 7 years. That's typically venture. And then like they kind of, IPO'd earlier. And the only reason I think is because we're kind of since we're on a faster timetable now in many ways, people have to kind of like sit back and be more careful about what they are spending their time on. So because of that careful thing, I feel like, even if a company doesn't have work from home, like implemented explicitly, people will be more careful about being like, oh yeah, let me meet up with someone random I haven't met for like, a 9-person meeting with extra people that are like, being there to like, just kind of like make us look more important, and then just have random coffee and random like, talking about nothing. So I feel like people, when they actually do meet in person, it'll be actually to have deeper conversations or to transact, or where that human element is needed. But I don't think they're going to have like, even right now with Zoom fatigue, people realize like, wow, we're having too many meetings. We were having too many Zooms. So people are more careful about, I think, curating what they're doing in their workday as well as their schedules.
Right.
Yeah. So that's here to stay, I think. As well as like, I think the handshake, like I shook someone's hand like maybe 3 times during the pandemic. Each time I was like, oh, hand sanitizer. Like, exactly. Like you're not as into like the random, things anymore.
Exactly. Totally. I'm just like, it's okay. Or, I do like the Southeast Asian, like, just kind of hello this way.
I gotta do that. I see someone's hand hang over, I'm like, hey, and I just reach into my bag, or I'm like, oh, what's up?
Yeah.
What's up?
Exactly.
Hey.
That's true. But speaking of your investment, I do want to ask a little bit, because you said you're moving more towards obviously the social entrepreneurship, or looking at impact investing or ESG. Just want to see what are some of your like current criterias or top things that you look for when we do invest or angel invest.
Rarely ever angel invest anymore. So if I do though, and it's like very careful about doing it, it's like basically realizing that they are companies that I can introduce to other co-investors, or if I can do a follow on, because like right now, it like my check size, it doesn't make sense to go so early unless I'm already advising and mentoring them. So one of the things I do to do my due diligence, and I think if anyone like wants to meet me later and realizes this, is I actually don't give my advice necessarily for free. I'm actually using that, and I'm using the sort of like mentoring as a way to do DD on that startup, and vice versa. They can see how I am, because I'm also not someone who's like, okay, like if they don't need me for something, then I don't try to fix what's not broken. I don't like try to meddle and micromanage. That's someone's startup. But if they need help, I'm not the type also who just writes a check and be like, oh, okay, you figured out. I'm just the money. I don't do that. I get very involved, and I try to help. I'll introduce like revenue and business and partners and other investors. I will do that. But then the other thing that I try to do is that I try to keep my circle also with good people. So my main criteria is a good person. Not only like there's a value proposition, they're really moving the needle somehow in the world, and it's like somehow impact driven. But so it has to improve something for humanity. It has to improve something for the world. It has to have like something that really improves like life measurably, right? So I look for that criteria. The other thing I look for is like, that person's track record. Like, do they have a track record of not just like doing well in business and having success, like preferably exits, but do they have a track record of helping others? Really? Like, because one thing is like life is too short to fund like, jerks and assholes. There's no reason. Right. So I don't want to be like, oh, let me like empower this person. They have success and then they go and fund more like them. Right. And I think that's one of the problems about like the investment in the venture capital space. It's not even just diversity amongst founders. It's diversity among funders, because people fund those who they look like, who they resonate with. So the other thing I look for is diversity in the team. That's not saying I don't invest in men. That's not saying I don't invest in like, I only invest in certain people. But like basically you're like a, 5 dudes and you come over. And I'm not even saying like white guys or like Asian tech bros or whatever. If you're just like very not diverse, then why would I give you money to go own more armies of yourself? And then like, just keep propagating that. So like, I try to look for, even like right now, one of the reasons why I'm doing my family office and then I have investment committee is that I'm trying to get a lot of next gen to understand impact investing. So I'm trying to lead by example. And then, for example, I'll look at deals with other family office friends and things like that together. We all watch out for each other. Because a lot of times, like a lot of people are sending us deals all the time, knocking on our doors. And for us, the challenge is like curating that and cutting through the noise, right? Because there's like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm worth it. Give me money. And sometimes like you really have to make sure that all the values are aligned. So the other thing I also do is that like I won't even introduce to my friends or other investors unless I'm about to invest or have invested, etc. So, because I feel like that also is a signaling thing. So I want to make sure I don't dilute either I don't even call it my brand name, but it's more like my reputation. At this point, that's my biggest risk. Like, I do not want to risk my reputation. I've had like enough like good track record that, I can afford to miss out on, I can have FOMO. I'm allowed to have FOMO, right?
Yes, of course.
So that's kind of my criteria now. And then I also my other criteria is that I like to hedge my bets. So I like to like surround myself with really smart people. If I invest in a VC fund, for example, or even if I'm like co-investing with them, I like to benchmark my performance against theirs and vice versa. So I like it to be like knowledge sharing amongst good people and always be learning.
Nice. Very cool. What is your proudest moment in your professional and career?
Okay, so my proudest moment, there's actually been 2, and I'm going to reference 2 because I feel like women are really like, one of my proudest moments is when I had my first baby, when I was having my daughter. Like literally, I was like getting sewn up because I had a C-section, emergency C-section, and then like 20 minutes later, my boss walks in because they were like, "Hey, just let her, have a little." She's had painkillers, and he had to give me some papers to sign so that we could go list on the stock exchange in Australia. So that was like quite exciting because I not only had brought a baby in the world, but that was like, big IPO and exit for me. So I was like, that was a really awesome moment. The other amazing moment was actually last week when I found a startup. One of my friends in my circle, hi Max, had found a startup that was in distress, and it was like it was a cancer vaccine. And I was lucky. I met a guy who eventually invested almost like 10 million US in, and then helped them turn it around, and then started doing more bets in pharma. And I was like, wow, this guy's like really knows what he's doing. And then we ended up investing too. And it was great because they, like a year and a half after he got involved, they IPO'd, which was like last week on NASDAQ. And I'm like, that's amazing validation because I had lost 2 aunts quite young to cancer. And my uncle has, pretty late stage cancer right now. So for me, I wanted to be like, F you cancer. And then I did that. Like, so that was like kind of on my bucket list of things to address in my life. And I'm really glad that happened. So those are 2 of my crown moments.
Do you have any last advice for our audience or any advice that's given to you that you thought was very helpful throughout your career?
My biggest advice is actually, it's like 2 things. It's about like, nourishing yourself, kind of being your own coach in many ways. Like, you have to respect your body signals. You have to respect what it needs. Like, I almost died with my son because I didn't realize that I had an asthma attack. I didn't realize like it broke my water. I didn't realize I was in silent labor for like a day. I didn't realize like I was, I didn't realize I was in labor. I mean, that's like a pretty big sign to miss. So I feel like the biggest thing that I would recommend for people and also myself is to develop that sense of self-awareness. Listen to your body and your mind and your cues. Feed it what it needs. If you're like, okay, I need to do this right now. I need to do, then listen. And then follow your instincts more. And then the second thing I would say is build up your team around you. You're actually the sum of parts of, I think, the 7 to 10 most close people in your circle and in your life. So try to put people that you really admire and respect in your orbit. Don't have someone there who's dragging you down or a hanger-oner, because that really messes up with energy, right? And you also don't want to start showing some of the same values of people that you might be like, oh, that's morally, on the border. You don't want to, people, we really are sponges. So we absorb that of those around us. So go to the inspirational talks, go with, curate your friend circle very carefully. I mean, I think the pandemic not only was helping for curating our time, but now we can also focus on what relationships really matter the most, right? And also what endeavors are most worthy of our time and attention and energy. So I say you can always make money, you'll always lose money, you can always spend money, you can, but time is something that you won't ever get back. So you have to really guard that for yourself. You can't, get back this amount of time, whatever we spend on each other. So don't waste it on the wrong places or the wrong people.
Absolutely amazing. Every time I hear you talk, there's always this more information comes out. It's like, wow, that was and did so much. So thank you so much for.
I'm glad you say more information comes out, because I'm always worried you'll be like, yeah, it's more of the same. And I'm like, oh no.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I've been hearing you speak at different types of, rooms or different events. So obviously different purpose that you speak.
Different facets, different things. Yeah. Exactly. And me too. Every time I hear you speak or interact in a room or you're interviewing someone, I learn so much more about you, that person, that topic. And it's really great because I really feel like you have you turn every interview into a conversation, which I think is I don't know how you do it. It's a very admirable trait.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much. No, I try. I don't know. I try to be, more personal and but also get the information out and be practical to the ones listening, right? That's so they can all learn something about the interviewer or the speaker that I'm talking to. So yeah, thank you so much. I know you have to run to your next thing. So but thank you for we'll talk soon.
This was time well spent. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you. Talk soon.